And between the maximum and minimum, there are many different options. And indirectly suggest that this is approximately the process that is happening right now. In any of the options, hierarchically higher management is imposed on the interconnected intelligence of the supersystem, on the supersystem as a whole, on its fragments, and its endowed elements, two complexes of specific tasks. And we have talked about this with you before in a free form, without the influence of considering this issue. First, withstand environmental pressure. As the environment acts to withstand. Remember, I said you need to eat, dress, move, and so on. Second, use the resources free from this to achieve the goals for which the supersystem is introduced into the environment. That is indeed to work towards the goals set by God in relation to humanity. These two complexes of tasks form a flow of management goals in relation to the environment over time. That is, are these two tasks present? Yes. And these tasks set specific and measurable goals for their achievement. And here we come to the careful consideration of what question? The consideration of the question of the resilience of the supersystem. Now remember, resilience, the definition of resilience, is one of the key provisions of the sufficiently general theory of management. What is considered resilient? Remember, we showed our goal is communism. We are steadily moving towards communism. A step to the left, a step to the right. We were brought onto the right course. It turned out we did not arrive where intended. That is, we need to change not only the course and eliminate deviations, but also to adjust the goal. Remember the diagram we drew, the three control schemes, do you remember? Predictor, corrector. That is, you set a goal, start moving, you look, okay, not okay, I adjust the goal. That is, it is not only about adjusting the course to the goal, but also about adjusting the goal itself. And how do we recognize this goal? We need to enter into dialogue with God again. Well, that's everything we've already covered. So, the resilience of the supersystem. I just reminded you of that. And all of this, if I just talk about it, you should already know. Well, since we are studying all of this for the first time, there are some reminders. Therefore, if all the resources of the supersystem are directed at maintaining a stable presence in the environment, then its productivity, the supersystem, in relation to the goals for which it was introduced into the environment, is zero. That is, we are not fulfilling the tasks assigned to us by God. For what we were created, we are not engaged in that. We only satisfy the ever-growing material needs. So, materialism does this, while others focus on spirituality. That is, I retreat into myself and am not interested. I am perfecting myself. I am not interested in how society is structured, but is there a supersystem? There is also a task regarding it, what it will be. And all these Eastern teachings do not interest me. I am improving myself. But what if it seems to happen by itself? Incorrect. And what about the supersystem? Suppressed by the environment, and our habitat has become the technosphere, right? When all the people are here, you have to live like people do. The neighbor has a summer house. I want one like that, Vanya. Do you remember, right? So what is it? There is no talk of achieving any goals with it at all. That is to say, generally speaking, here is the planet Earth depicted. There is a supersystem of humanity on it, and humanity is engaged in foolishness according to the satanic biblical concept in which we live. So there is no happiness on earth. Happiness is in heaven. Accept it, repent. The goal of man is to get to paradise, and so on. That is all nonsense. We are not fulfilling the tasks assigned to us, the tasks of God. In this particular scenario, what will be exactly at the top priority in the goal vector, specifically here in the picture? Staying in an environment with a certain amount of resilience reserve, such as in case of increased environmental pressure, the resilience reserve of the supersystem in relation to its presence is represented as the total number of its elements, not currently used for reflecting and absorbing environmental pressure. That is what determines the resilience reserve of the supersystem in relation to its presence in the environment. And how many elements are not occupied by this? Compare, how many do we have unoccupied? Well, let's say, who is engaged in fundamental sciences? Few, and now even fundamental sciences want to be in the spotlight. But no, that is, everyone is engaged in reflecting the impact of the environment. Everyone is limited. Everyone is working, and they have no time to lift their heads and think about God and so on. What is this? And the resilience reserve of the supersystem should be determined by the release of free elements that would engage in what? Recognizing potentially emerging factors. In general, no one sets the task at all. If they do set it, they do so without understanding its essence, just intuitively. So, therefore, in this case, the same resilience reserve of the supersystem is its elemental resources, which can only be engaged for targeted interaction with the environment in accordance with the vector of goals of the hierarchically higher encompassing management. That is, this resilience reserve simultaneously determines the possible productivity of the supersystem in relation to the environment. Well, it's redundant. That is, again we say, either we reflect the impact of the environment on us and do not engage in the main task for which the environment was created, the work to achieve the goals set. For the supersystem, what conclusions can be drawn from this? The mastery of the development potential of the supersystem lies in bringing it to maximum performance in relation to the environment along the vector of goals of hierarchically higher encompassing management. That is, we need to organize the life of the supersystem in such a way that each element has time as possible, and some elements of the supersystem should be freed up entirely to work towards the goals set by the hierarchically highest encompassing management, spending less time reflecting environmental pressure. That's it. These two tasks are interdependent. That is, we also need to reflect environmental pressure. To do this, we need to expend as little effort as possible. The main efforts should be directed towards achieving the goals for which the supersystem was created. From this perspective, one can also approach the assessment of management quality, both in terms of the reserve of stability in the environment and the performance of the supersystem in relation to the environment. And here, a simple graph can be drawn like, that is, if, 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 then that is, if. This means the performance of the supersystem in relation to the goal for which it was created is increasing. Therefore, all of this is necessary as it should be. And if the performance decreases, then it is not needed. Like now. The global predictor tries to ensure that all elements are incompetent, understand nothing, so that they are all engaged. Moreover, he believes that there are too many elements on Earth, so they need to be mowed down, destroyed, and so on. That is, the goals of this global mafia. According to the terminology of the concept of public safety, the global predictor represents purely satanic goals that have led the supersystem to a global systemic crisis and have effectively brought it to a global catastrophe. Mastering the supersystem and its vast, immense potential for development. Well, here it is very brief. Let's remember, this is a global historical process, generally speaking. That is, now we indeed look at it from the perspective of the functioning of the supersystem. What is being discussed here? Supersystem was introduced into the environment. Here are the interacting supersystems, mediated management, the hierarchically highest encompassing management, and so on. Humanity actually lives in the biosphere of planet Earth on Earth. The beginning of mastering the supersystem of its development potential started. The environment affects humanity. How does it act? A flow of goals. It can have three components. First is continuous interactions with the environment, constant over time and in nature. Indeed, some factors constantly affect us. In relation to these factors, what should the supersystem do? It should constantly reflect them, right? That is, if some factor is constantly acting, there should be some elements that reflect it. Well, let's put it this way. Regarding the worker of Christian messages, what factor is acting? Each element of the super system should, generally speaking, be nourished. That is, there must be nourishment, otherwise we will die. Therefore, there should be constantly functioning structures for this impact. Which ones? Agriculture, bread baking, and so on. That is, providing people with food. But besides this, there are cyclical and regularly recurring, clearly predictable impacts of these factors. Well, winter appears, summer appears. This generates structures that must work cyclically. So what are these structures in relation to our lives? Prepare the cart in summer for winter. That is, there should be snow removal machines in winter and irrigation machines in summer. It's nothing complicated. There are environmental factors that act constantly. Therefore, there should be such a structure in the super system, emerging structurally from unstructured impacts. Remember, structure arises from the unstructured. That is, when information impacts, structure forms. And here we have formed. The structure of public catering continuously and reliably operates in various environments. And the structures that provide roads, for example, are well known. And we won't take more complex ones. So, snow removal equipment in winter, and in summer, there is different equipment. These are those who operate cyclically. And finally, the last elements or factors that exist are episodic interactions, interacting statistically ordered, predictable only in a probabilistic sense, such as, well, let's put it this way. Could a comet fall on us? Generally speaking, it could. What we talked about, and so what? We then need to keep some structure in constant readiness, waiting for when the comet arrives. That is, to feed these people, pay salaries, or somehow organize it. That is, this generates unstructured management of statistical characteristics. That is, it needs to be organized so that all structures work towards this goal. But there is no need for constant action. But when necessary, recalling the movie Armageddon, such a probability exists. It does. We have, well, let's say, even now, what we will consider what I know and in which I am a specialist. There are missile forces, and they exist both here and there. There are missiles with nuclear warheads. So, we are ready to wipe each other out with these missiles. They exist. They are on standby. They are waiting for war. But if an asteroid potentially appears and humanity is in serious danger, what can be done? It is possible to organize a defense in such a way that flight missions for the missiles can be carried out, and they can be launched in turn to destroy the asteroid by hitting it with nuclear warheads upon approach. That is, in this sense, if humanity, and I am getting ahead of myself, I will say that humanity as a whole is a super system, but it consists of, remember the picture, Western civilization, Eastern civilization. Russia itself is a civilization, meaning several super systems. That is, in a super system, there are certain super-duper subsystems, and they are all fragmented. They are in antagonism. Because such a concept of divide, conquer, rule has become unviable. Here again is an example for you. But what is important from everything I just said is to understand that the environment affects the super system in various ways, meaning some factors act continuously, so structures are needed that continuously work on defense. There are those that are cyclical, so reports need to be kept cyclically, and there are factors that have a probabilistic nature, so the work of the super system must be organized in such a way that when such a factor appears, a structure quickly forms from the unstructured and reflects this factor. That is essentially what we are talking about. Based on this, the interaction of the super system with the environment is impossible without reflecting information from the environment into the super system. This leads to a change in the order of the super system. That is, it is necessary to establish a certain vector of goals in relation to all these factors. Therefore, based on the establishment of a goal vector, the interplay of structural and unstructured management methods can be organized in accordance with the complete management function. That is, The complete management function, remember, includes recognizing environmental factors, forming a recognition stereotype, establishing a goal vector, creating a management objective function, that is, a management concept, organizing structure, organizing control, and maintaining the operability of the structure. This is the complete management function. Therefore, based on this, if a certain element recognizes the environmental factors it encounters, the second, it will spread additional information about this factor among other elements of the supersystem. The information will be acknowledged and accepted by other elements that have the necessary management concept and understanding in their memory. And then, this concept will be passed to the initiator of the structure's creation, and there will be elements, either free or taken from structures with less important priorities, possessing the specialization needed for the newly created structure, and so on. To the extent that the management process will be completed with full management functionality within acceptable timeframes. That's what I've said. Now I will explain simply, using this picture as an example. What is happening? This is happening now, at this very moment, in relation to the intriguing concept of dead water. Here is an element that you all know. It is the internal predictor of the USSR, which recognized the factors that affect our society. He formed an info module. This is the concept of public safety. Now this information module is being conveyed to others who are capable of understanding and realizing all this, taking action. Then they will form a certain structure from the unstructured, which will be able to reflect the factor that affects this system. That's everything I've told you. So this is described in a complicated scientific way, but simply it looks like this. And this, as you can see, is being implemented now. So the only question is the speed of this process. And the speed of this process depends on whom? On us, that is, how soon we will spread this information through the method of auto-synchronization among the super system in which we live, including abroad. But how the process of this dissemination goes will be in the concluding part of our lecture course on the concept of public safety. Right now, we are currently establishing a certain specific and solid theoretical foundation. What remarks can be made about this? Here is the observer. Here is the observer. An observer who has no concept of unstructured management may perceive stable, unstructured management either as a spontaneous, uncontrolled process. But we have already discussed, remember, the order from chaos, where we considered at the very beginning of the lecture on sufficient general theory of management, or he will look for stable structures where there are none. That is, he asks, where do you have this? And we say no, there is none. He thinks that somewhere there is someone sitting, some kind of agent, and everything is very simple, spreads unstructuredly. It is also important that here is a picture drawn. This is a change in the social standard of purity. And here is a change in technology. Do you remember the law of time? And observers, i.e., everyone sees their own segment of time. So there are certain processes that track the mafias, meaning various occult orders, such as Masonic lodges and other similar groups. And they last what we are saying. We are used to thinking in 5-year plans, but there are 50 and 100-year plans. And the ordinary person who has no idea about what we are talking about now does not see these processes. Why? Because they simply have a long-lasting nature, and he does not catch the trends over the course of his life. It was like that until changes in the ratio of reference frequencies. Now, all processes by the law of time have become so exposed that we can already see who is handed Masonic orders and lodges. That is, all these Masonic orders and lodges are just child's play now, and whoever exaggerates is a Mason. So what if someone is a Mason? What good does it do? If it had any meaning before, now it's just child's play. That's it. After the change in the informational state, the situation changes very quickly, and all their plans collapse. And they somehow inadvertently let it slip about what is happening. Well, one just needs to be able to distinguish these processes, and everything hidden becomes apparent. This is just for erudition, as they say, by the way. The relationship between structural and unstructured management. And why was this picture drawn? Because the management of the super system from the side of these Masonic lodges, various orders, had what kind of an unstructured nature, meaning inside. It was a structure, but in relation to the rest of humanity, it had an unstructured nature. That is, certain information was disseminated, which prepared society for the perception of something. But I will return to the prophecies because in principle, one can endlessly illustrate with various examples. Yes, here we are. And I want to share, but I can't tell everything. Therefore, in this part of our video meeting, I will say that don't think I will tell you everything. In this lecture course, in general, I have 303 parts. I have 303 first parts. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't tell it all, because you can't tell everything. I just want to simply provide a comprehensive framework that shaped people's understanding of how it all happens, truly. To provide some core, a skeleton, and of course the flesh needs to be enriched with factual material and so on. But as I illustrate this Masonic issue, I will say this. We have already discussed prophecies, forecasts, and so on. How they use it and how we should relate to it. For example, let's say we are the mafia. We have planned to carry out, let's say, a revolution in country X at a certain time. We know it will take 10 years for this, 5 years for that money. We need to prepare a leader and so on. Approximately so. The timelines are, of course, very approximate. And we let a little nonsense into society. Well, mostly various books. Well, to make it more colorful and not boring, I say Nostradamus, that he is Nostradamus the foreteller. Nostradamus said that at the beginning of the century, tragic events will occur. In the northern country, moreover, it will be done by some person, like Mikhail Gorbachev, some kind of spotted one, and so on. That is, in the most general form, this matrix is formed, yes. And then, people perceive this matter, well, as Nostradamus predicted, he suffered. And then, when it is done by certain structures, everyone says, well, it just happened by itself. That is, the management is hidden, you see. That is, everything is done purposefully. There are structures. People do not see these structures. For them, the history unfolds by itself, like the mortar with Baba Yaga. Here are your illustrations. Therefore, all these Nostradamus predictions and other divinations should be taken seriously. But seriousness with what? That's when some people say one thing, another says another, and by the way, knowing our concept, special services started to use it. Therefore, newspapers and magazines talk about what will happen in the Supreme Authority, what reforms will be adopted. And all of this is linked to some Nostradamus predictions and other divinations. And the people do not see that all of this has already been foreseen. And most importantly, they have prepared him. That is, he is already ready for something to happen at the beginning of the century or in the year 21. They predicted it this way, and so it will be. This is what it's about.